from GAC had the opportunity to go to Valdosta State to play football for Chris Hatcher.
To define him.
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. In our business, there is no second place.
Such a great guy to work or play for. I learned so much about football from him and just year-round schedule, how to be a competitor, how to be a winner.
Welcome to Son Coaches Podcast, Season 9, Episode 1, and it's the first one we've done on video, and who better to have on than the head football coach at North Oconee High School, Coach Tyler Aurandt. Thanks for being on with us.
Oh, thanks so much, Coach Lamb. This is a treat. I've listened to so many of your podcasts through the years, and I know we tried to do this, I guess, about a year ago, but, I mean, this is a treat for me, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Well, I appreciate you, Coach. I know year before last we had the Coach of the Year clinic down in Orlando, and the guy that was running it said, who can you get to come speak? And it was right after y'all won the state championship, and I said, well, who do you want? Because we'll ask them. And you had a prior engagement and wasn't able to come down, but at least you responded, and I sure did appreciate that. I didn't get big timed or anything like that, but just like we do with all of the episodes, Coach, tell us where you actually grew up and went to school.
So I grew up in Gwinnett. I went to Greater Atlanta Christian School. Started there in 6th grade. My mom got a job actually in the cafeteria, and my cousins had already been there, and so they kind of convinced my parents to take a look. And so me, my brother, and my sister all started there. Now I went there 6th through 12th. My sister was 2 years behind me, and my brother ended up going there K through 12. So kind of got my start and my love for football there. I didn't start playing football till 7th grade. I was a baseball kid growing up. I played year-round baseball until 7th grade, and then started playing football and kind of fell in love with it and gave baseball up after my 10th grade year. And from GAC had the opportunity to go to Valdosta State to play football for Chris Hatcher. And that I couldn't have enjoyed those years more than, I mean, they were incredible. Coach Hatcher was such a great guy to work or play for. I learned so much about football from him and just year-round schedule, how to be a competitor, how to be a winner. He was one of my favorite that I've ever had a chance to be around. And so played there from 2002 through 2006, and he got the job to go to Georgia Southern right after my senior year. And so there was a transition where David Dean took over, and he was my wideouts coach and recruited me from GAC, and then was the offensive coordinator as well. So, it's kind of funny because I graduated with a degree in finance and accounting.
I always ask that. I'm like, hey man, did you always want to be a coach, or did you get in the wrong line?
I had no desire to do that. Like I had done an internship.
You were going to go make some money.
That internship had offered me a job, and I had like 2 classes to finish that summer, and I was going to have my second major in accounting. And Coach Dean, I was just kind of walking through campus and stopped in the building, and he said, hey, you have any interest in, continuing to coach? We need a GA. And I said, I don't know. They just kind of offered me this job. And he said, well, think about it. So I called my dad, and of course my dad's like, you're crazy. Like you've worked so hard to get all this lined up. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know that I'm ready to be done with college. Like just because I had so much fun down there. So went back to him within 24 hours. I was like, yep, I'm in. And so ended up getting my master's and coaching there. And so my first year that we're coaching, we won the national championship. And so you start your career off with that taste in your mouth, and then it kind of evolved from there. But had a chance to win a national championship with Coach Hatcher as a player, and then my first year coaching as an assistant with Coach Dean, and then he ended up giving me the wideouts room after a year, and ended up becoming restricted earnings after I finished my degree. So stuck around there for 4 years, and knew that I was going to have to start making some decisions and moving around if I wanted to move up. At that point, I had started dating who is now my wife. She went to school down there, and she's from Statesboro, and she loves South Georgia, and she didn't like the idea of kind of moving all over the country from job to job, as you kind of have to do at that level if you want to make it. Um, and so I just kind of started looking around and, putting out feelers like, hey, if you have anything, let me know. And I'd always kind of followed the Grayson football program, because I helped recruit when I was at Valdosta State. So I built a relationship with Coach Khan, and actually went up there because he was kind of transitioning from the wing tee into more spread based system, or wanted to open it up a little bit. So he just wanted to talk football. Well, by the time I had left that afternoon, I had met the principal, the AD, and had a full blown interview, and didn't even know that that's what I was going up for.
The good old
It was not certified to teach anything. Um, and so they ended up getting me on provisional. I went and got another master's. So now I've got 2 undergrad and 2 masters. And don't use 3 of the 4. So it's like I spent all this time in school for nothing, because I'm not using any of those degrees outside of budgeting for a football program. But ended up being at Grayson for 3 years, coached running backs my first year, and then transitioned to quarterbacks and was named offensive coordinator my last year. And then got a phone call from Parkview. And if you know Coach Khan is one of the best offensive play callers of, what he did in high school that I've been around. The ability to make adjustments and know exactly what to go to when they were trying to stop certain things. He was one of the best that I've been around. And he felt like it was necessary for him to call plays, which I completely respect. But I felt like if I wanted to be a head coach, like I needed to be in that spot at some point before I became a head coach. And had the opportunity to work for Eric Godfrey at Parkview. So Coach Godfrey was at Loganville, which is about 2 miles away from Grayson, but had never met him. I'd heard a lot about him, and he was going back home because that's where he was from. He graduated from Parkview. So I went over there, was his offensive coordinator for 3 years, helped kind of get the program back on track per se. Got to the playoffs a couple of times. But then it's funny because for some reason, the North Oconee area had always caught my eye. And like I go to Georgia games with my dad, I mean, from as young as I can remember. And driving down 316 or 78, we were always kind of in that area or this area, driving through. And so I just kind of followed them, and that job came open, and I said, well, I'm going to shoot my shot, see what happens. And didn't really expect a lot. Got an email back, said, hey, we'll be back in touch, finish your season. And once your season's over, let's just talk. Our season ended a few weeks later, and was asked to come up for an interview. And it's crazy. Like everybody talks about, you got to know people. Well, the principal, Dr. Philip Brown, who's now the superintendent at Jackson County Schools, was who brought me in, to interview me. He was a Valdosta State grad. He was a basketball GA while I was playing at Valdosta State. Never knew him though. Like never spoke to him, didn't know him, but he knew kind of who I was. And one of my best friends was Sean Calhoun, who's the head coach at Colquitt right now. He actually lived in Dr. Brown's apartment. So Dr. Brown had a rental like an apartment that he rented out to GAs. And that's where he lived. So I met my wife in Dr. Brown's apartment at a party after a game at Sean Calhoun's, and it was Sean Calhoun's apartment. And like, so I go into the interview, and I hadn't put all those pieces together until we just kind of started casually talking. And I said, hey, look, this is going to sound crazy, but all of these things happened and I met my wife in your apartment. And he was like, done deal, you're hired. It was like the stars aligned. I mean, obviously I wasn't hired and had to go through another interview, but like it just felt right. It was one of those things that like I felt like it gave me a better opportunity to get the job. Because I think there were a lot of really qualified candidates that had interviewed. But I do think that that probably helped me to a certain extent is, you know, those relationships and those connections that you're able to form from your journey over the years. So, needless to say, been at North Oconee. This will be going on year 10, and took over a program that was struggling at the time, and we struggled the first year. Win your very first ball game, you think you're on top of the world, and then you lose 9 straight, and you're like, we shouldn't have gotten rid of these boxes because we may be packing this thing up pretty quick. But we were fortunate to get some really good coaches in there, and that's a tribute to Dr. Brown and just his philosophy on how to hire and personnel and what is needed, and you know, being willing to do what was necessary to help get our program back on track.
Yeah, and it was a slow burn too. You guys, you could see it coming. It wasn't overnight success. It wasn't go get a pay to play team or, you know, gather together a group of all stars and let's just go win one. I mean, it was nothing like that. We watched it over the years get there. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about who you know, because we've been telling, you know, advising younger coaches and people get in the profession. Sometimes it's important who knows you. You know, it is important to know people, but if other people know you and if there are connections, it's why it's so important to never burn a bridge, never, you know, never leave a place and with a bad, you know, you might have a bad taste in your mouth, but don't leave one in theirs. And because you never know who can help you down the road. And I think that's just awesome that you had a full circle moment there with the Valdosta State deal. So talk a little bit about the transition from being a coordinator at a big time program to actually taking over your own you know, being the head sitting in the big chair for the first time. And you know, everybody always says it's like drinking water out of a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
You're never really ready until, you know, it's easy for us as the assistant coaches to sit back and I'll tell you what I would do, or I wouldn't put up with that, or da 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 da, until you have to be the guy. So what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, no, I can't tell you how many times you sit there in a chair as an assistant, and you're like, this can't be that difficult to figure out. And then you're in that chair and you're like, oh my goodness, like why did I ever like try to process things like that? Because you don't know all the information. And when you're sitting in the chair and you have so much information, it's a little bit overwhelming, because you're trying to make, you know, perfect decisions, and a lot of decisions got to be made right in the moment. And so you're just kind of going off your gut so many times. But you know, I always took it with whatever I was asked to do. Like I'm the head coach of that whatever. So coaching running backs for Coach Khan, like I am the head coach of the running backs, and so I tried to operate with that mindset. And so when I had a chance to have one side of the ball, you know, I just kind of started thinking, okay, here's notes that you made that, you know, when you become a head coach that you want to use this. So I kind of tried to apply that to the offensive side of the ball in terms of leading a staff and meetings and all those different things that you're responsible for when you're a head coach. But it's so much different. And everybody's watching you and everybody's waiting for you to make a decision. And like you said, everybody feels like they have the answer, but don't always have all the information. And so you're navigating through things that you don't necessarily, you know, as an assistant, have any idea that that's even going on or that's even crossed the desk of the head coach. Um, and so I think the biggest thing, you know, just in the transition was just trying to learn on the fly, just like any new head coach has to do, all the different aspects of the program. Because when you're a coordinator, all you're thinking about is the offense. and what do I got to do to get the offense ready to play? You're not thinking about the special teams or the defensive, scheme or their plan week to week. You're now all those things you want them to fit together, but how do I make the offense as good as I can? Well, when you're the head coach, I mean, you you're very rarely thinking about the offense, the defense, or the special teams. You're thinking about, okay, we got to leave at this time. We gotta have this pregame meal. We got to have this ready for postgame meal. Who's going to do laundry? Like all of those things, like that's the stuff that's going through my head early on that you don't really think about. And then all of a sudden you're thrown in the fire and you're having to create plans and systems for everything that you do in the program if you want to function. I feel like you got to do that if you want to function at a high level. I mean, you could be average and not really pay attention to a lot of that stuff, but I wanted, I wanted as much organization and things in a systematic approach as I could possibly have. And that took several years to get to that. And I finally feel like over the last 3 years, we're finally in a place where we have really good systems in place. We've had coaches on our staff for a long time. And so they understand, and we're not having to meet all the time to talk about this and that and how we're going to handle this or how we're going to go about this. Everybody kind of knows how everything's going to flow. So when you're meeting, we can get really detailed now with what we're meeting about and be in and out a lot quicker than we probably could, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, as we're still trying to build and develop our program. So I would say just the amount of volume of information that you're taking in and then trying to create processes and systems based off that information, that was probably one of the biggest adjustments for me. Hiring, like you don't understand the hiring process until you're in that chair. You're like, well, here you got this, position available. So why can't we just go get this guy? Like it's not that easy. Like there's so much that goes into that, and that's probably one of the more difficult parts of this job. Is one, finding qualified candidates, and then two, trying to make the puzzle fit together year after year after year, so that you got a chance to be successful.
Yeah, a lot of times you get to the game on Friday night and the game gets you a break from everything else.
No doubt.
Like you actually get to like let your mind go because you're more of a CEO. I mean, you're really, especially at a bigger program, you're going to be a manager more or less, unless you call your own side of the ball, which in a bigger program that's rare. And I always joke and tell people all the time, if y'all ever see me on the sideline as a head coach, I could do the CEO part, and I'm just going to walk up and say, "What are we running here?" What? Hey, how about we stop them? Does that sound good to everybody? All right, let's do that. Coach, do y'all want to go for it? I don't know. Do y'all think we can get it? I mean, that's essentially I get to watch the ball instead of like you said, dealing with. I got this booster club meeting coming up, or we've got a fundraiser tomorrow morning, or I got to be at the park to watch the junior league play, or my kids got this going on. I mean, which everybody deals with that, but you know what I'm saying? When you're the head coach, you have to deal with everything. Where when we as assistants, you were the head coach of your little universe.
Right.
And like you told me
That's
before we came on air, hiring folks these days is a problem.
it's difficult. And I think that there's a lot of layers to that. But obviously, you know, at our place, and every place is different. We don't have a lot of turnover very often. And I'm not talking about our coaching staff. I'm talking about the 8:15 to 3:30 gig. Like people love our school system, and our school system's different. But the 8:15 to 3:30 is really, really good. So you have teachers that have been there for a long time and they have no intention on leaving until they are retired. And so when you have somebody leave a position, like that position is like gold, and there it is like a free for all, or head coaches fighting one another to try and get that spot for their program. And so that's one thing, it's a positive because we've got a lot of teachers that have been there a long time and they understand our kids, they understand our community, they understand our school district. But from a coaching standpoint, that's really tough to hire because it's got to fit. And we are a high academic school, and so you better be a dang good teacher. Like, this ain't just like, hey, I'm just going to plug you into this classroom. You will get eaten alive in there. These kids are brilliant, and so smart, and ask really challenging questions because they have a higher level of intellect, or however you want to call it. Like, they're just, that's just the way it's built from kindergarten. I got kids that are in the school system right now, and they're going, like, I got a fourth grader and she's doing math, and I'm like, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, and I'm a math guy, but, like, it's just a challenge that is there for our kids, which I appreciate. Like, I want my kids to be challenged every day in the classroom because I feel like that's how they're going to grow. Um, and so if I just stick whoever in the classroom, and it may end up in a bad situation. So I got to be really strategic and make sure that those people that we hire are highly qualified teachers. Usually your best football coaches are, because that's what makes them such good football coaches, is that they're really, really good teachers. And we've been fortunate to hit on our coaches that we've been able to bring in the building, because they have done a tremendous job of leading in the classroom. Um, so that, and then the fact that that I feel like you're getting a younger crowd every year that's trying to apply, and the younger crowd is a lot different than it probably was 15 years ago, where they expect more, but they don't want the responsibility of more. A lot of times, like, they want this title or that title, or how are you going to help me here? But, like, are you going to go line the field? Are you going to go pick up the trash in the locker room when it's overflowing? Like, they don't want that responsibility. They want more responsibility in terms of titles and things like that. But which is that makes it more difficult, because nobody wants to bring somebody in that's going to drag things and pull things in the opposite direction of where you're trying to go.
Absolutely. Let me pay some bills here real quick. Hey, coaches, if your team needs to raise money, check out Scoreboard Fundraising. In the past year, they've helped more than 1,000 teams across the Southeast run simple, effective fundraisers, from popcorn to online donations. Call Mike James at 770-680-3424 or visit scoreboardfundraising.com. A lot of teams I know are using these guys. Again, that's Mike James at 770-680-3424. I got to meet those guys down in Orlando. They do a great job. Most of them are ex-coaches. They're stationed in Georgia. They know us. They know the Southeast. They know what we deal with raising money. So they're our title sponsor for the next 100 episodes. That's 4 seasons. We're very excited to be on board with them. So make sure you check out Scoreboard Fundraising. All right, now, Coach, back to what you were saying about the young coaches and younger generations. I'm not going to pile on or anything like that. I actually do a 3-part presentation when I speak at clinics. One's being a great assistant coach. So you want to be a head coach, and how are we going to coach these kids? Because they're so much different now. And something you said that really resonated with me was, you want all the responsibility, but you want the title, but you don't want you don't want smoke that comes with it. Now, as a head coach who right now is currently looking you advertise you're looking for an assistant, how important are titles to you when you start looking for an assistant coach?
That is irrelevant to me. Because I think titles are so freely given now. And I don't know if it's an appeasement, to make people happy. But, like, when I'm looking at resumes, like, I'm not looking at titles. I'd rather, like, I'm going to go find whatever position group you've been coaching. I'm going to go find some type of film and see how your kids play the game. Like, that's a big part for me. How hard are they playing? How physical are they playing? What does the product on the field look like? Because that is a representation of the guy that's leading that group. And so that's part of the process. But, like, checking references, Like, I mean, I'm going to call whoever I got to call to see who, who's going to say what, because somebody's going to have to say something negative at some point. Like, I want to know what that negative is. And a lot of times that negative, you know, may not be a negative for us. And I don't throw out examples or anything, but like, there's a lot of times where you're going to find somebody that may have something negative to say, and I'm just trying to see how deep or how negative that it really is, because everybody is good when it's good. But, how do you respond in adversity? Like, I'm going to ask that question. Like, when things get hard, what do his actions look like? Is he going to fold? Is he going to give in? Is he just going to bear down and get gritty and, get tougher than the moment? Because that's what I'm gonna ask the kids to do. And if you can't do that as a coach, then your kids probably aren't going to be able to do it, because they're going to follow suit with however you're handling something. Um, but I think I put a lot of weight into what other people that have worked with the candidate have to say, in whatever capacity. It may be it was the DC and the candidate was a position coach under him, or there was a DB coach and I'm talking to somebody that was on the other side of the ball. Like, I want to know what they look like when they're on the grass. I want to know what type of relationships they're able to build with kids. Like, I don't care if you've been a coordinator or you've been assistant head coach or any of that, what you've done. Like, the things that matter to me generally don't involve the titles, because we have really good systems, I feel like, in our program. And like, I'm not trying to change the systems, but I do want to bring somebody in that can bring new ideas, a new set of thinking or a new way of thinking. How can we do this better? How can we do it more efficiently? But like, again, I'm not trying to change who we are or what we do with a hire, but like, I want somebody to come in with some fresh ideas that's got a different way of seeing and a different vision on some things that maybe can help us change or evolve and make us better.
And that segues perfectly into my next topic that I wanted to go over with you, and that was you learn from a lot of good people. You played for great coaches. Your position coach in college is a great man, great coach. You sought out people to work for that were very successful. So I'm sure you learned so much from them, more what to do than what not to do, but you learn that sometimes too when you get your first gig. When you took over as the head coach at North Oconee, what was the first thing that you were like, all right, this is my month one, these three things I have to get done, or this one thing is the most important? Where did you attack establishing your culture and your program first?
Yeah. And I learned this straight from Mickey, Coach Khan, the weight room. W- I wanted to build the foundation of our football program through the weight room. And when I got there, kids were sprinkled in and out of, we're on a block schedule. So it's 4 blocks. There was 8 to 10 kids here, 8 to 10 kids here. And the weight room wasn't, what's the right word? It just needed some attention. There were kids in there that probably didn't need to be in the weight room, but they found it a safe place to go where they could relax and hang out and not have to worry about the stresses of another elective. Um, and so I quickly, within about 2 weeks, realized, all right, this isn't going to work. If we're truly going to try and build the foundation of this program in this room, then we're going to need to change this. So we went and visited a few places and got some ideas. So we started bringing them in before school. We started at, I want to say 6:45 or 7, that very first semester. And the whole team was required to be in there. And we went 3 or 4 days a week, depending on the week. But I needed to get them removed from the environment that they were in, that had been created, where there weren't a lot of kids that were lifting. Some were. And then it wasn't mandatory for all of them to be in weight training. So this was like, here's the first brick that needs to be laid, is we have got to get this part fixed. They've got to understand how important it is. And once we went through that semester, we were able to get them all in weight training after that first semester, so that my first full year there, it looked a lot different. But and I'm talking about, I'm still living in Gwinnett. I'm leaving the house at 5 a.m. to get there to set things up, to get things ready for kids to come in and lift. And so they lifted until 7:50. They went and showered, and then we tried to give them some type of snack, Uncrustable or a protein shake or something easy to send them to class with. But we did that from about the middle of February all the way through May. And I think they realized how important that part of the program was going to be. And we had a lot of kids make a lot of gains and see a lot of progress, which only accelerated that part of, you know, our program, and trying to lay that foundation, because the kids looked different after that semester. They felt different. They moved around differently. And I think that's ultimately what kind of set the trajectory for the next couple years. Um, and we were able to get our strength coach now in, after that first year. So he's been with us. This will be year 9 for him. So I went a year without him, and then we got him in place. His name's Will Peters, and he has done an unbelievable job. It's one of those things where, like, I don't even have to think twice about what's going on in there or what the plan is on a day-to-day basis, because he has all of that under control, and the kids respect him because they see the progress and, the gains that they've made, and he holds them accountable. And I think kids, a lot of kids, you may think, I don't want to be held accountable, but once you're starting to be held accountable and they see the reasons why, they appreciate that more. And so I'd say that was number one on our list that we needed to get, worked out initially. And I think it's paid huge dividends, because that's something that we hang our hat on right now, is how we play the game. And a lot of that starts with how we lift in the weight room.
So, from your first year there to currently, has your approach to spring practice changed, or have you done it essentially the same way?
No, it's changed a little bit. We have a lot of kids that play multiple sports. And our baseball team, for as long as I can remember, is playing until school gets out most years. I mean, like right there at to the end. And so we're always going to be missing a handful of kids. Maybe not initially, right when I got there, that was the case, but over the last 6 or 7 years, that has been the case. And we've got a lot more kids that are qualifying for state track meet, which means that we're starting spring and they're still running. And then our lacrosse program has really grown and taken off. And so we're missing a handful of those kids. So it's become very developmental. We're not out there for a long time. It's probably an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes a day. And it's fundamental. And we're just trying to install to a group of kids that probably played ninth or JV last year or the year before. And they need the reps. I don't need the kid that started for 2 years to get a ton of reps in the spring. So it's been good to kind of transition into this model, because it gives us an opportunity to see what these younger guys can do where there's no pressure to win. We do not play a game. I did that early on. That was a huge mistake, I felt like, because I've got kids after that game, they're like, "Oh, I'm a 2, I'm out." And they're quitting. And they're realizing where they're at on the depth chart, because it's a competitive environment. So, like, what are you going to go? Like, you going to put the best ones out there to begin with more times than not, because there's people in the stands and they turn the scoreboard on when I didn't think we were going to turn the scoreboard on that year. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh crap. Like, we're going to have to win. Like, we're going to have to figure out how to win this now, so you can build momentum going into the summer. And I lost like 4 or 5 kids after that game that were they were either going to win a starting job or they were going to play at least 50% of the snaps. And I said, you know what? It ain't worth that, and you can't control the situations or the scenarios that play out in those games a lot of times, because hey, I want to work red zone, I want to work, this situation, and so you may only get into it a handful of times, but that may be what you need the most from a teaching standpoint. And so we just kind of got away from that. And I like the idea of being able to play 22 at a practice versus 11. And we don't post any depth charts. We just divide them up into a red and white group, and we try to get as good a competition against one another as we can possibly get. It's not ones versus ones. It's not twos versus twos. It's not one versus twos. That's the other thing that I think a lot of people will start their scout or their serve teams that early. Man, our sophomores, like, I ain't putting them through that because they're already going to go through enough of that in the fall. Like, I don't want them in a scout or serve role until we get to August when we're actually starting to game plan, because we need to grow and develop them. You don't ever know where one kid's going to be from the moment you step foot in the spring to where they could be in August if you just keep pouring into them and giving them reps instead of tagging them or labeling them as, or they feel like they're getting tagged or labeled as, well, I'm going to be a scout team kid. Well, and what are a lot of kids? They're going to go find something else to do because there's so much more to do in today's world. And doing stuff that's hard is just they're not open and receptive to that. So I'm going to go play baseball year round, or I'm going to go play basketball, or I'm going to go get a job. I'm trying to retain as many kids. That's always been the goal, is retention. So I feel like we've got a good process or a good system in place for how we handle the spring, but it has become very developmental, a lot of teaching. Everything is slowed down in terms of the rate and the volume at what we're trying to, put on them. Like, I just want to see them play football. Can you block and tackle? Like, who can do that really well? And that's what we kind of focus on.
So spring ends, you head into summer after the first dead week. What do summers look like for you guys at North Oconee?
So we're going to have every kid in our program, 9th through 12th, at least 3 days a week. So our ninth grade is going to go Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Our varsity guys are going to lift Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, but Tuesday in the month of June is usually going to be some type of team related activity, whether that be a 7-on-7 or an OTA. And I've really kind of gotten away from those as well, which is a whole nother conversation. But, um, you know, like, we're going to try and do something fun one of those Tuesdays where it's just not football. Like, we've gone to Lake Lanier Water Park the last 3 years. We've taken them over there just to have fun and get away and make, help them understand, like, we're not all business. Like, we want to go have fun, and we want you to build relationships and have great memories. So we're looking for, ways to do that. And then once we come back in July, we go that same kind of schedule, except Tuesdays just become, a modified practice where it's a heavy install as we're trying to get closer or getting closer to August. And then obviously this year is going to be a little bit different because they changed the acclimation windows. So we're kind of navigating what that's going to look like. But um, yeah, I mean, we go from 8 to 11:30, and a lot of that, it's not like go, go, go. It's like you're going to lift, you're going to have 20-minute break, like, just take a deep breath, recover, and then, we're going to do a little bit of running, whatever outside running that looks like that day, whether we're running hills or, some type of conditioning or some type of speed work. Um, and then that lasts about 30 minutes, and then we're gonna spend about 70 minutes a day on football. And every kid in our program's got an offense and a defensive position, and every single day is split right down the middle. So it's going to be about 25 minutes on offense, 25 minutes on defense, and then we're going to start installing special teams during those times as well. Um, it's good. We get a lot done, but we also try to remember that they're kids, and so, like, you go on vacation, you go on vacation. Like, I'm not. You need to go be with your family. You need to go be a kid. This is not college football. We're not going to live and die off every single moment. And we're going to put our work in, but you know, I want these kids to be kids. I want them to enjoy their summers and be able to go do things that they want to do. Because I feel like that's a big piece. Because burnout is becoming more and more real, and I don't want them burned out in the month of October. I want them burned out when we get to the end in December. Like I want them ready to be done when we're done. Done.
Well, now that you're becoming an old head, or that you are an old head, what are some things about the game since you first got in that have changed, good, bad, or indifferent, that you've just noticed about the high school game? Not necessarily X's and O's, just the workings of the game, the stuff that goes around that head coaches have to deal with that maybe Mickey didn't have to deal with back then.
Obviously, probably the biggest thing is just the wet bulb, and operating around the wet bulb, the contact or the, all the new rules with contact and how many days in a row. Like I'm talking about, like some of those practices at Grayson were some of the most physical practices that I've ever been a part of. And you're talking about we're getting out of school at 2:10, we're on the field about 2:45, and we're getting off the field some days at 5:45. You're talking about 3 hours of just a slugfest. And like I'm coming from that spread world where like we're tagging off in college. Like we're not trying to ever go to the ground. And here we are going from this half line run period to this half line run period to this inside period to this team period. And I'm like, I looked at a DC and I was like, hey, are these kids, are we good? And he was like, they're resilient. That they figure it out. And lo and behold, like I go through that whole first season and I'm like, this is unbelievable. These kids ain't blinked an eye, but that's what they knew. That's all they've ever known. And, I think that part has changed drastically, where there's more research that's been done. There's more information out there. Obviously there's been rules put in place. Um, but, I think that's probably one of the biggest changes. And I joke with these kids all the time. I'm like, look, guys, we used to go to this camp in August and we would have them up at 5 a.m. and practice. They would eat breakfast. We would practice again. They would have lunch and have some free time, and then they'd eat dinner and we'd practice again. And they're like, there's no way. And I'm like, yeah, that like every day. Like, I mean, because
It was a thing.
yeah. And, it's like they don't believe me. And oh, you're just messing with us, just to tell us that we're not very tough. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling you you're not tough. Like, I'm just telling you this is real. Like, this was real 18, 20 years ago. Like, there was no rules about, hey, it's too hot. We can't go out there. Like, you just went out there and,
Figure it
you
out.
found a way.
You figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you just, and I've got one right now. My 17-year-old has a severe Freon addiction. That joker is not going outside if he can help it. And he should be on a golf team in San Diego somewhere where the weather's like Goldilocks. It's just right because he don't like it if it's too hot and he don't like it if it's too cold. But back like you said back then, wet bulb. Especially like I've always been in Middle and South Georgia. They know wet bulb in the shades. I mean, you went to Valdosta State. You know what it's like down there. I mean, good Lord, if y'all had to operate with a wet bulb, you never practiced. And I'm not
That's right.
saying that's a bad thing. I'm not at all. I'm all about the safety of the kids. But like you said, now we're older and wiser, and we've learned more. But I'll tell you something else that's changed about the game. I'm surprised you didn't jump on it first. Is the technology? Do you remember
Oh my
what it was
goodness.
like breaking down film before DSV and huddle?
Oh, so that was probably one of the things that like I had to learn first when I was GAing is, we are going to get and we didn't have to go make exchanges. Like there was a database that everybody put things into, but you're having to go in and break everything down. And if that computer flickers, like you may lose everything. I can't tell you how many nights I'm sitting in a room that's about 4 feet by 6 feet, and it's got in there is a desk and a million DVDs in there, and it's 3 a.m. and I'm punching in numbers so that it's ready for the staff meeting the next morning. And then you hit save and you start burning. And if something's wrong with that burner, man, you're like trying to figure out how you're going to survive when you walk into that meeting and you hand them a disc that doesn't have everything it needs to have on it. And so, like, you're running around trying to figure out who can fix this. Like, you're going to the media center or the library on campus, like, hey, I need you to come check on this. Like, I can't figure out why this isn't working. And I mean, like, the stress of that is completely different. Huddle has changed the game, and just now all the analytics stuff that's starting to come out that you have access to, whether you're using Huddle Beta, the new Huddle, or there's Cover Zero and Answers that have the ability to give you information and cut down work time. But you're 100% correct. Like, the efficiency that you can work with now, so you're not having to spend hours upon hours breaking down and watching film, that has changed our schedule drastically, even in the last 10 years.
Oh,
Just
there's
the
no doubt.
abilities that we have now that we didn't used to have.
Yeah, I try. It blows my mind that a staff would still week 2 or 3 stay up there on a Sunday till all hours of the night. I, I'm I, I'm like, what are you doing? What could you possibly be Dude, you can press 3 buttons, and this is high school football. This ain't rocket science. They're gonna run this. They're gonna do this. If their dudes are better than your dudes, hey man, just do the best you can. Let's try to figure something out. But this spending 8 hours up there when you don't have to, like, we have the technology. Somebody came up with the technology so that we didn't have to sit in that 4x6 room all night and come up with all that stuff. That's always that. The older I get, the more I'm like, man, my time's valuable to me.
No
You know,
kidding.
I mean, it's way more valuable to me than anything else. And I know I've got to do my job, and I know I've got to pour into these kids. But if we can cut an hour off, hey man, let's do that.
No doubt. No doubt. It has changed the game. And You know, the first year we've been in a pool on Huddle was last year, where everybody's putting their games in so you can get ahead, and you can spend time where you have time, getting ready for an upcoming opponent, where you're not doing all of that on a Saturday or a Sunday now. So there's so many advantages, as long as you've got the organizational tools to put things in place to make sure that you are efficient when you do have your staff together. Because that'll drive coaches out of there faster than anything. I feel like is, man, I'm not getting to see my family. We're high school coaches don't make enough money, especially assistants don't make near enough money to be spending hours upon hours away from their kids and their wife.
Agreed. Well, Coach, I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. You were a winner as a player, you've been a winner as an assistant, and now you've been a winner as a head football coach. And I know y'all can't wait to get back and do it again. I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome. I'm glad to be a part of it. I appreciate you asking me, appreciate what you do. And I've gotten so much information from other coaches that you've sat down with and had conversations with that we've implemented or have helped change our program in a positive way. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Coach.